Down. Okay, good. Okay, good. So anyway, I'm just telling him how I was a wacky 8-year-old. And so anyway, but I just always was kind of fascinated with real estate. And my dad ended up becoming an appraiser and worked for Bank of America, but I was always fascinated with real estate. It's just in my DNA, I think. And so anyway, and then kind of skipping forward, I ended up I graduated from BYU. I thought I was going to teach ESL for a long time, and I speak Spanish too. And so I thought, okay, that's going to be kind of the thing I love doing. But real estate was always kind of in the back of my mind. Um, and then we had kids. So I had our kids, and they were young, and I made some decision. I was like, hey, we need to buy this house. But I didn't have, even though my dad was a realtor, he like had already kind of been out of that industry. So I didn't really have like a mentor. And I remember when we bought our first home, I was like, I have no idea if we're getting a good deal, bad deal. I didn't have any clue. It was a new build. So we just like walked in and bought it. And I was like, I hope that this works out, you know? So it ended up being a really good decision, and we made some good money on that property. So then, kind of skipping forward, I just always kind of knew when we needed to move or what, and I started doing more research on like how it could, you know, real estate really could just change your life also, right? And I started to roll the equity that we would make into the next house. So I started to kind of go, hey, maybe we should move every 2 or 4 years or something and kind of make a little bit of equity and then kind of go, to this next thing. And my husband, I remember at one point, he was like, are we gonna like settle down at some point? And I'm like, yeah, we're gonna do that. But in the early years, and so, it was kind of easier to do. And then I got into construction, not really on purpose, but because I had a baby on my hip. My general contractor declared bankruptcy, like we were in the middle of a build. And he declared bankruptcy, and I had like a 2-year-old and a little baby. And I was like, I guess I'm in charge of taking over this house. And so I basically started talking to all the contractors. I learned a lot. I learned new Spanish also, like construction Spanish. I was like, that thing over there, and I don't know, So anyway, it was pretty funny looking back. But I ended up having to general out my house. And so I had to be the general contractor. I had no idea what I was doing. And this is like earlier days of like the internet, So I'm like, it's not like there's YouTube videos on everything. So I was just like, I'm hoping we meet city code, and everything. So anyway, did that process, built, and then I was really fascinated with it. I loved construction. I loved the idea. And then eventually we bought a house to renovate. It was during the meltdown of 2007. We waited a little bit. And then in about 2009, I got a really good deal and on a house. And then everybody along the way, though, kept saying, why are you not doing real estate? Like you should be licensed in doing real estate. And I was like, I don't know. It's just, I had a different company I owned at the time. And so, but I loved it. I loved it. And then skipping forward, we did really well on that house. So I just kind of started to do things. And then Airbnb popped up about 15 years ago. And nobody really knew what Airbnb was. They were like, what's Airbnb? And we bought some of the first Airbnb properties that could be legally Airbnbs down in St. George. And so we bought one, we actually bought two, like really small homes. And I did everything wrong on those Airbnbs. I mean, because nobody knew, right? It was like early days. And I was just like, yeah, I don't know what I'm doing, but we'll figure it out. So bought those, but then people started calling me about Airbnbs, and they're like, "Hey, we know you own an Airbnb. Can you tell us how to make money with an Airbnb?" And I'm like, "Oh, I don't know. I mean, I'm in this, I'm learning." And I started to give the contracts to my friend who was a realtor. So she knew nothing about Airbnb, but she would just write up the contract and she would make all the money, right? But I'm like the one like helping and doing the Airbnbs. And finally I was like, this is maybe I do need to get into real estate. And in the meanwhile, I was involved with some of the early days of Chinese immersion schools here in Utah. I'd gone to China several times. I was there twice last year. I helped start the dual immersion Chinese programs here. I served on the state school board and I ended up working for Governor Herbert. So I was one of his campaign managers and I was traveling the state through him. So you get to know a lot about real estate because when you're traveling the state out in all the remote areas and you learn all the things happening, it just became a lot of really interesting information. And people were calling me saying, hey, what's happening? Or they would say, hey, I know that you've been to Bicknell, Utah. I don't know many people in Bicknell, Utah, but I know you've been there. I'd say, yeah, I've been to Bicknell. And so then they would call me about things. And so finally, the governor, Governor Herbert, if you know who Governor Herbert is, he was the one before Cox. Um, he basically looked at me, and most people don't know this. He actually was a realtor. That was his career. He was also a county commissioner and things. And he's like, Heather, why are you just not doing real estate? Like you're already doing it. And so I thought, okay, after this last campaign, so I was one of his campaign managers in 2012 and 2016. After 2016, I said, okay, I think I'll get my license. So in 2017, I got my license to do real estate and I decided I would be my first victim. And so I sold my own house. I got my license and the next day I parked it at a flat fee brokerage and they were just like, hey, good luck. I had no idea what I was doing. And I thought, okay, I'll sell my own house. And literally, we put the shutters up. My photographer was there. We put our shutters up because we had done a huge renovation on this house, like a few $100,000 renovation. They drill the shutters up, and literally, my photographer's there, and she takes a picture of the house. And then we ended up listing it. And then I got an offer. And I don't know if you would know Jen Jurgensen in this office. She was actually the realtor on the other side. So I met Jen and I remember I looked at her and I was a new agent and I was so scared. I was so scared because I had no idea and I didn't really have a lot of support because I'm at this, flat fee brokerage and they were like, oh, you'll figure it out. And so I'm reading through the contract. I'm like, oh, am I doing this right? And I thought if I mess this up, at least it's on me because I'm my own, agent. And I remember she's using all these acronyms, like she's calling me and she's asking me these questions. And finally I said, I'm a new agent and please don't take advantage of me. I said, because I don't know what in the hell I'm doing. And I remember that was the thing I said to her. And she was so nice. Meanwhile, she was at a different brokerage. And after the transaction, we enjoyed working together that she was like, hey, you should come and work with me over at this other brokerage. And I was like, I'm just gonna do this part-time. And I kind of went in with this mindset of I'm just gonna do this part-time. And I wasn't sure if I was going to jump back into political world or not. So I was like, I don't know. And so anyway, I stayed in touch with her. Went to a few different brokerages. I kind of jumped to like I went to like three, and each one got a little better, but I was still like, I haven't found my people. Like I haven't found and I'd had this vision of how I had hoped a real estate office would be, and just collaborative and friendly. And then one day she posted something online and said how much she enjoyed KW. And so I said, I don't know if I'm going to switch, but maybe. And it's just ironic because we did this first transaction together. So anyway, I came over to KW and I just loved it. And I had just friends and support. And that's why you really should congratulate yourselves because you will not regret having started here. And I hope you stay here forever. But if you don't, the training you get here is heads and tails above anything else. I've learned so much. I've been here now 4 years. I've been an agent 7.5 years. So, and I started out really kind of part-time the first few years. And so after that, I ended up, I just, after I came over here and I learned that there were systems. I remember they gave me the MREA book and I was like, this is like, yeah, this is all the stuff I've been thinking about, but nobody's told me, and I didn't have a system for growth. And when I had been at my previous brokerage, I had met with my broker and my business was starting to really boom. And I said, what do I do? Like, I am so tired. And because and I don't recommend this, by the way, but I started in two areas of the state, right? Because I was doing Airbnb and investment properties down in St. George, and I was doing properties here. So I was like driving back and forth a lot. So I don't recommend that. I don't recommend starting in two areas, but I was exhausted because I was just going back and forth so much. And I remember filling out a Rep C. I was down in Fillmore and I was at a trucker stop and I'm looking at this semi like right next to me and I'm filling out a Rep C and I'm paying $10 to use the internet because I was like, okay, I got to just get this thing out the door. And I was like, there has to be a better way. There's got to be something. And so I came over here, loved it. And I've grown as an agent. I've grown as a person. Take advantage of all the trainings because the trainings here are, they will make you a better person. Even just, it's not just real estate. And what I think I've realized since being here is that, you know, um, real estate, it's like we kind of talk about it like, oh, I'm a realtor, or oh, I do real estate. And what I've really switched my mindset into is to realize that I own a business, a problem solving business. And I'm a problem solver and the vehicle is real estate. Does that make sense? So it's a little bit of a different mindset because when you go and you really say, hey, who can I help today? And how can I help them? And do they need help with any, wealth growing, or different things? Then you start to realize that almost everybody needs help with real estate. Everyone. It may not be right at that minute that they're going to buy or sell their home, but they need somebody in their life that they can call and that they can talk to about growing wealth and passive income. If you look at the data, they will show you that usually for most people, their greatest asset is what? You probably all know this. What is their greatest asset by the time they retire? Do you know? Their home. It's their home. And they may not have a 401k, they may not have other things, but a lot of people will have a home. And so that's why home ownership is so important. And I talk to different, even single moms or different groups of people, and I explain why home ownership is important. And it makes your society safer. Home ownership, like there's so much to it. Um, that I don't think we think about that as much. And so a lot of times when we think, oh, I'm going to call this person and see if they want to buy or sell a home. It's more than that. It's, hey, do you understand, like I said, even starting with that statistic, that most likely your greatest investment is going to be your home and then talking them, to them about that. And I think when we have that perspective, your business will come. You will attract people to you as well by just being a problem solver and realizing that that's what your business is. You have a problem solving business. And yes, you have a license, but you just know that that is what you are. And when you truly believe that, that's going to change your business and your life. So kind of going back when I first got licensed, I had a pretty good SOI, actually an amazing SOI. That was probably one of my gifts I had just because I had traveled the state. I knew a lot of people. But at the same time, people would be like, oh, are you buying leads and all these things? And I was like, no, and I don't know. I'm just still learning what I'm doing. But what I started to do, and I just want to give you a few hacks that I did. So I started to look at, I would post occasionally on social media, and I am definitely not anyone that has anything amazing with social media. Oh, hello. Hi, friends. But I started to look at who was looking at my social media because I knew that then that person would have an interest in my life and I should have an interest in theirs. Does that make sense? Because if they're looking at you on social media, like think about it, who is liking your posts, or who, and I was surprised when I actually looked at who was actually looking at my social media. I had friends from high school in Arizona that I hadn't even talked to in 10 years. I had just a whole wide range of people. And so I started to kind of look at that. And so I started to message them back, right? Or I would like their posts and comment on it because they would say, oh, I'd post a picture of my daughter or something. It wasn't even real estate related. I'd post a picture of my daughter and somebody would like it or they'd say, oh, how fun. And so then I started to really take an interest in other people. And I would say, and like I said, it wasn't direct um, real estate, right? Related. Like it was again based in friendship. And So I started taking interest in other people's lives, even these people I hadn't talked to in maybe 10 years, from high school. And I would just kind of message people through Facebook, IM them and just say, hey, I was just thinking about you. And then I would look on their social posts and I would post something and say, oh, it's so great to see you. And I was so like blown away at how many people I kind of reconnected with. And one of the first natural questions is when you reconnect with people, well, what do they ask you? What are you up to these days? And I said, well, I just got my real estate license and I'm selling homes and I'm doing this. And they would say, oh, that's interesting. Yeah, I'm thinking about selling a house or I'm thinking about buying something. And so then I just started to post a little bit of real estate. Not a lot even. I just kind of said, hey, just so you know, I got my license. I remember because I sold my own first house. I said, hey, I'm a new agent and I just sold my house and I posted something and I looked at how many people were supportive of that, right? And then I started to message those people. And that's how I really gained a lot of my leads at the beginning. It was just through those kind of reconnection moments. And again, it's because those are people you already know are interested in you. So if you reciprocate and you take an interest in them, it's just a natural dialogue. And so anyway, so let me kind of go through a little bit on generating leads. So I wanted to kind of start with that because that's just one of the easy ways to do things right now. And kind of I'm just going to kind of flip through some of these. I mean, this is pretty basic, but a lot of times we talk about, okay, get out your phones and call 20 people. There's all of these people that do things like that. And, I'm just going to be honest. I don't think that that's the most effective thing because, again, you want to find people that already have an interest in you or that have an interest in real estate or things like that. But if you just are calling random people, sure, that's great for reconnecting with people, but it's not the best use of your time. And so what I started to do also is like I said, I kind of just I also started a spreadsheet and I just started to kind of make a list of people that I'd connected with recently. And again, I was really surprised at like somebody in Arizona said, hey, my brother is looking at buying a house in Provo. He's got kids coming to school. Can you help him with that? I'm like, sure. But I started to pick up people that were not necessarily that first. It might be like a friend or a family member of that person. And again, don't discount people that live out of the state because um, even this last year, just kind of a side note, this last year, I had not ever done a lot of referrals, like as far as referring people out to move to another state or coming in, right? I mean, kind of, like referring out. Um, or what I've done, do you know much about referrals? Do you all know about like when you refer, usually you have like a 25% referral fee that comes back to you, right? You get to negotiate that, it's not set. So this last year, I took more of an interest in doing more referrals. And I probably had at least 15 referrals last year. So it was a significant part of my business. And what I did is I even had friends that were selling a house in Arizona and they were selling. And I messaged them and said, hey, do you want me to find you a good agent? And they said, yes, that would be great. Like, can you help us with that? Said, sure, because then as you go to more of these KW events, like if you go, like I hope you all go to Family Reunion in February, but network with the agents that are there. I'm like blown away that people don't do this because I can't tell you how many agents I will meet at a KW event that then say, oh, I don't have anybody for Utah. Or and we're one of the fastest growing states. Like we are not living in a state that's dormant. We are a high growth state. So it's amazing to do that. And I have picked up, I probably did at least 15, like I said, at least 15 referrals last year, maybe more actually. And then I found like for the person in Arizona, I interviewed agents for them. I called and just basically said, and I kind of knew what they were looking for. And I said, hey, I would call and interview this person. They did. And then guess what? I got a check for 25% of that commission when it closed. So and you've got to be creative, especially in a market like right now. You know, think a little outside the box, but it really comes down to networking, not just with the people you know, but networking also with other agents. And again, I can't tell you how many people I've just from those conferences at KW, it always pays off for me to go to family reunion or mega camp, you know, because those are the two that they offer. And it pays off because I've every year for the past 3 or 4 years, I've had at least one referral come out of that just because I've connected with somebody. I was waiting in line at a Starbucks and it like at the convention center. This guy's like, Utah, I have somebody for Utah. And I was like, great. So I just like had my little cards and my lanyard thing. And I was like, yes, I'm your Utah agent, you know? And again, think about people that are not just people think of referrals like when they're moving from here somewhere else. But again, it could be people that you've known for years that just they don't maybe know a good agent in that area. We're the largest brokerage in the world. We have amazing agents, new agents, they've got mentoring. I mean, it's a great system. So take advantage of that because that's one of the advantages of being at KW. So so kind of jumping back here, the other thing is so just kind of your sphere of influence. Again, even remember it's not them, it's who they know as well. And then expanding your SOI and lead gen, like I said, network with other agents. One of my biggest regrets when I was a newer agent is I think I was nervous a little bit, like of other agents. And you have to realize that they're kind of, in a way, your client as well, because you're marketing to them. And I can't tell you how great it is that I have a lot of agent friends because I would say now I probably work with an agent I know at least a third of the time because I might have a property and because I know John, I'll send it to him. I'll text it to him like when it goes live and I'll send it to him and say, "Hey, I know that you work with investors. I just thought I'd send you my new listing." And they'd be like, "Oh, hey, this actually fits criteria for somebody I know." So I just started to kind of even individually text people. And I still do that now. In fact, right before this class, um, one of my friends in this office, she was telling me, she goes, "Hey, I know you work with investors and I have this project." And she told me about it. And I said, "I think I have a buyer for it." And so she sent me a text. And right now I'm sending it out the door to my client. So like be creative. And again, like the other side, the other agents, we need to be friends and you will work with them. And it's amazing sometimes how many people will even um, give you business. Like I've had other KW agents in the state that I've met at a local event and they'll say, "Hey, I don't have anyone for Utah County. I don't have anybody for Provo or Orem or wherever." And then they'll call me up and we connect and, you know, I've gotten referrals from in-state as well as out of state. So, and in, you know, kind of a crazy year, I just kind of started thinking out of the box, and that's what we really need to be doing as well. So, I'm gonna just kind of flip through some of this. My fear of failure was greater than my fear of lead generating. And again, I I think that lead generating is not just picking up the phone and dialing. It's having sincere interest in other people. And real estate will come once you have that sincere interest in them. And one of the other things, like instead of just dialing through my phone, I think this is one of if you take nothing else away from today, I hope you remember this piece. Um, I started thinking about who is selling and at what times of the year, right? Because, for example, you know, if you're just picking up the phone and calling through your friends and everything, ask yourself, is it the right timing? So, for example, I'm going to give you my calendar of who I kind of know is buying and when. So, a lot of times I'm going to start at kind of a weird time, but you know, in the fourth quarter, I actually do about a third of my business in fourth quarter. So like September through the end of the year. I do Yeah, a third last year was in the fourth quarter, which most people and most agents kind of take off and they're like, okay, it's vacation time and it's the holidays and oh, I didn't need to work right now. And for me, I work with some investors and new investors. And a lot of times what happens is they are talking to their CPA about taxes, right? And a lot of times they need to buy something before the end of the year. And so I start talking to my potential investors. Some of them are seasoned investors and some are first time investors. I start talking to them starting in like even late summer, but most of my investors, they're off with their families in the summertime. So my summers are actually not my busiest time of year. So we all are preconditioned to say, oh, it's, summer is the best time to sell. And it's not necessarily.
And kind of like dating myself as well, but there used to be a time when that was true.
So true.
When
Yeah.
kids had a whole summer off.
Yep.
And, you've got a couple kids hanging around the house with nothing to do and, but now it's like everything is like year round activity.
For sure. There's different people. So ask yourself this question. Who is buying and selling right now? Who can I help and who is looking to buy or sell right now in this market and in this season? And even by month, like start thinking month to month as well and ask yourself, because you're not going to be usually selling. Let's say there's a family with 3 kids in elementary school or it doesn't really help to call them and say, hey, do you want to sell your house before Christmas? Most likely they don't want to disturb their holiday and they're in the middle of the school year, right?
Right.
So in Utah, what I found is that our spring season really starts as early as January to February. And so just remember that spring kind of starts in January or February. And that's when typical kind of families or might be buying or thinking about it, right? But I think of who is in this market right now. And then a lot of times, if they're in the traditional school cycle, right, then they will want to list their home sometimes in April, right? Because they want to hit kind of an earlier spring and then they want to move so that their kids can be in school in the late summer, right? Or at least by July and have a few weeks off or something. But people tend to think only of certain people or demographics, right, that are moving at that time. Last year, I asked myself, I said, okay, who else? And I'm going to give you, and I'm actually going to speak about this in team meeting next week. But Gary Keller talks about the different D's. There's like, like the letter D: divorce, death, diapers, and degrees, right? So, divorce. In the last 2 years, I've probably helped 5 or 6 clients a year that were divorcing, right? Or somebody had been through a divorce and maybe it was part of their judgment or the, kind of their agreement that they needed to sell the house, right? And so I would help in that situation. I also did a few that maybe inherited properties, maybe parents had passed away, gone to assisted living centers, and so kind of that death one. Um, you know, I basically just, people would call me for that as well, and that happens all year round. I have investors that buy all year round, but I'll tell you this, my investors usually do not buy in the summer because like I was saying, they usually are on vacation, right? They're kind of like they go with the school calendar and then they get panicked in fourth quarter. I'm actually going to have a huge January because some of my investors were like, or just people that were thinking about buying an extra property. A lot of times they're looking because ask yourself, like, when we talk about degrees, the D for degrees, also, maybe they have children that are going to start going to school in Provo. And they're like, well, if I'm going to pay rent, I might as well buy, or they'll call me and say, what are your thoughts on that? And I'll say, you know what? It is smarter, buy a condo or a townhome, let your child live there, and then have, rent it out to other people as well, right? It ends up being an asset as well. So they're buying oftentimes around the college calendar. And then you also have them buying before end of year because they may want a tax write-off. So I think of people that maybe have had successful businesses that maybe need to buy something. I think of, again, degrees, like, or if they graduated. Like I have a few clients that are like students, right? And they may graduate in December or April. And so I think of, okay, then they may want to buy a few months earlier than that, or maybe they need to sell, right? And so I look at kind of who in what market is buying and selling, right? And that to me has changed my business. I think I've probably more than doubled my business. And I'm going to be really open with my numbers, and you can ask me any questions you want to ask. When I started as a part-time agent, I, I think my first year, I think I did like 75,000, and I was like over the moon. I was like, yeah, that's amazing, But and then I pretty much hovered because I was somewhat part-time. I wasn't fully committed. I wasn't fully committed to doing it full time. And so I hit about 100, right around there. And I had this limited way of thinking where I said, I just mainly want to make sure that I can pay for my car, I can pay for my kids' extracurricular activities, maybe a vacation, and like Christmas and things. And so, I just that was kind of my goal up to, is what I call it. We have to be careful of up
So
to.
you kind of reached up to.
Exactly.
You had a lower bar than where it should be.
That's exactly right. I didn't think of it as really a limited belief until even just a few years ago.
Yeah.
But I was thinking up to, and I had capped myself on that to say, oh, well, this is what I need. I need to just hit this mark. And then I came over to KW, and well, the year before I'd been at another brokerage, and I had committed the year before I came to KW. So 5 years ago, I committed to being a full-time agent. I said, you know what? I'm going to do this full time. I told my husband, I said, I need your support. He was like, yes. And he was all excited. He was super supportive about it. He was like, I've known you're going to do this full time for a long time. I needed you to figure it out. So, and just switching and starting to call myself a full-time agent, just really embracing that, I doubled my production. I went to over 200,000 in that year just by saying, I'm in this full time and I'm an expert in this, right? And I'm committed and I'm going to give my full attention to it. So I hit about 200 to 250 the year before I came to KW. I had not been tracking. I'm just going to tell you all the good things I was doing and all the bad things, but I was really not tracking numbers. And in most brokerages, they don't teach you to do that. Nobody had ever told me that. Like, oh, you should. It was just kind of like, oh, here's my commission check. Okay, great. And I was like, oh, surprised at the end of the year. How much did I make? Or whatever. I wasn't thoughtful about it. And when I kind of switched gears into that mode of, I'm in this full time, like I said, I went to 200 to 250. And then when I went to KW, there was somebody here named Tim Hewlett, and he was awesome. And he was the team leader, and he met with me and he started doing my numbers and like what my projections were. And I was doing a lot of new construction because I also do construction. So I know a lot about that. And I had contracts that came into the next year. And he started doing my numbers and he said, Heather, I think you're on track. You're going to probably hit 500,000 if you're in this full time. I laughed. Okay. I was in his office, upstairs. I said, you're crazy. I said, I am not going to do $500,000 in commission. That's insane. And he's like, you're going to do it. And he was the coach. His background's a coach. So he was like, yeah, you're going to do this. Yeah. I'm like, and I remember I actually cried in his office. I am not a crier. I cried in his office because I was like, just even knowing that somebody believed I could do that was like, totally it was so, I mean, my husband always believes that. He's amazing. So he's always like, you can do anything. But having a third person, somebody removed, tell me, Heather, you're going to do a 500,000. I was like, you're nuts. That's crazy. I didn't even know people made that much money, right? In real estate. It wasn't even a thought. So ended up figuring out that next year I actually did 600,000. And I was over 500,000. The next year I went up to 800,000 and GCI. And then I had a crazy year. So if you come next week, because I'm going to tell you a story about what happened. I dropped down to 600,000. We had a lot of just, my husband got laid off and it was just a horrible time and it was very unexpected. He used to work for Microsoft, and they basically told him he was 1 year and 5 days from retiring. And you have a lawsuit at under a year, but they basically, because he had the most amount of stock in his group, they let him go. And they said, well, then they tried to hire him back as a contractor. That's another story.
Yeah.
But because they didn't want to pay him in stock. And I was so mad. And I said, you know what? You're not going back there. I said, I'd rather me work and we'll figure out your thing. That I'm like, that was just a really crappy thing. And it just devastated him. So we had a lot of just kind of family things kind of going on. At the same time, my health was not good because I had a lot of stress going on. So I dipped back, but I still had a decent year. I don't want to say I didn't. I dipped to 600,000. And so last year I was at 600,000. And when my husband got laid off, I started to kind of, and you're going to hear this next week too, a little bit, but I started to think, I remember reading The Millionaire Real Estate Agent. So I know some people have done that. And I just said, if my husband does not get another tech job because he's now older and there's age discrimination out there and
Oh, yeah.
and I said,
Especially in a state where.
Exactly.
the age is so much-
and there's so many colleges, right? Like new kids that come out of college and they will work for a lot less. And so I was really nervous and it did. It took him almost like 9 to 10 months to get a job. And so that, so it was a really hard time and just give yourself grace during those hard times. And so anyway, but I remember at the time I went to Mega Camp in August of 2023. So that was a little over a year ago. And I basically just, it was the first time I really thought maybe I could hit $1 million. Like maybe that's something I could do. And I thought to myself, if my husband doesn't give it a job, and we own almost, I think we own 10 rental properties right now. And so, but I have to make the payments. I shouldn't say own. We have loans. We have loans. We have them in our name. Yes, yes. And they're great, right? And we're investors. Not all of them are Airbnbs. We have a whole smattering of things. But I was really nervous because that burn is about 30,000 a month on all of those payments. And I was like, if he doesn't have income coming in, I've got my house payment, I've still got kids, I've got things. And I thought if I have to pay for my own health care and all the things, um, where my comfort level was, I thought if I could make $1 million and I know I can help people. Again, it wasn't about me entirely, but my why changed a little bit. It became more of something of a distant thought. I thought, well, maybe someday I could make $1 million in real estate. Um, but it moved to, I want to shoot for that and put that on more of a list of mine to try and really hit that, because I thought if I do that, I'm not going to worry so much about all my rentals and my husband's job and everything. So you really should start your goals about 3 months earlier, right? So like that's why I bring up this right now, because we're already in 2025. And so you've really got to be pretty like knowledgeable on where you're headed. Yeah, for sure.
You mentioned earlier about your stress level and how it affected your health
Yeah.
and everything.
Absolutely.
Um,
I lived in a red light sauna. I got diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis and it was horrible. It was awful all at the same time.
I mean, it's gonna sound like we're swapping a war story, but yeah. I had a really, really bad infection the day I went to take the exam.
Oh, I heard you say that. Yeah.
Oh, my God. But I recovered. I mean, I
Yeah.
think positive, and same thing, you look ahead. But, I'm in a situation where it's like, there's gonna be warning signs along my journey that say, hey, Goetti, maybe you should think about getting something part-time,
Hmm.
for income, or at this point, maybe you should think about selling your house. And those things they kind of keep
Yeah.
me up at night,
Yep.
and they kind of stick with me throughout the day. And I'm like, well, what would be a better way to channel that stress and everything so that, so that one can succeed, be productive and help people.
I love this question because I realized I thought I had a pretty open mindset. I thought I had a pretty big growth mindset, but I realized that fear of the future and the scarcity was scaring me enough that it was hurting me, and it was hurting my ability to lead gen.
Yeah,
It was hurting my ability to attract people to me that needed help. I'm a big manifester and I just, I mean, I know that sounds crazy, but I started to also get into a little bit of like yoga breath work and stuff like that just to kind of calm myself, because when that was some of the lowest points in our life. It was just a lot of things happened all at the same time, and that hiccup and just being laid off and how crushed my husband was over a lot of it. It was just horrible. It's a really hard time for me to talk about, but when I would go into scarcity and fear mode, I started to catch myself. And none of us can control the future, whether we want to. We can do limited things, right? But I just had to say, I'm ready to serve people. And that's what I just had to start projecting and say, I'm here to serve people. And even in that hard time that I had, I said, I will help people to the very best ability that I have. And 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 again, I kind of made this millionaire real estate goal not entirely just because I wanted to go on a really cool vacation or something. It was like out of, I don't know what the future looks like for my family. And so I changed my attitude, and I just started thinking, how can I help and serve people? And how can I put myself out there, and still do well for my family? So I set that goal of being a millionaire real estate agent. And in the back of my mind, I was like, what am I thinking? Right. But I needed something, and I needed to just kind of be positive. And so
right.
what I ended up doing is, I've read a lot of books, and I'll tell you a few of the books that I would highly recommend. And I started to really kind of think about that as well, and just like, again, how can I help people?
That's
And
because my big why
yeah,
has been, my big why has been, hey, I need to replace the money that I lost,
exactly.
from my previous career. And it's a funny story because I actually, when I was on that Zoom call with the
Hmm.
director and the HR person, I wanted to do cartwheels because I was so freaking burned out
Yeah.
of working for FedEx and, just basically rolling out of bed, throwing on a pair of sweats and
Hmm.
sitting in front of a computer, 8, 9 hours a day. I was done.
Yeah.
But, and yeah, I got the nice severance and all that stuff. But that's what I'm living on.
Hmm.
And so just kind of like what you said, I'm too preoccupied with, I'm gonna hit that wall at some point.
Hmm.
And like I said, scarcity and thinking about what's not coming in and what
Totally.
is going out. And kind of like you, I mean, I do have a different approach. I am having success, prospecting by phone calls because I'm really,
Oh, and
really
phone
good.
calls are great. I hope nobody misunderstands. That's so important, but definitely, right.
But I'm very, very good at it, and I'm very good at getting people to open up and tell me what's going on in their lives.
And that's being a servant heart is what I call it.
Exactly, so
And I think that
that
it's,
changed my life.
yeah, absolutely. And I think, and it can coincide because my new goal of the millionaire, like doing $1 million in 1 year in GCI, like I said, it wasn't because, and I'm not saying it's wrong if any of us are like, hey, I want to buy a yacht or do whatever. Hey, that's up to you. Whatever it is that you want. But for me, it became more of a, can I help more people? How can I help more people? Who can I help? And knowing that I have to trust that the universe is going to pay it back to me somehow, like that it's going to be a cycle. And as long as I don't let money change my heart and my core beliefs, that's so important.
Yeah.
And I would really, really impress upon you, even as you're doing this, just to even write down some of your core foundational beliefs. And one of the first things I said, I remember being a young buyer when my husband and I bought our first house. And at first, they didn't give us the time of day, right? And we've all been discriminated against, I think, at different times in our life. We know what that feels like, every single one of us, whether it's, for any reason. And I remember just being discounted or not being treated that way. And that was one of my core things I wanted. And I started to say, how am I going to run my business differently? And one of the things I said is, I said, whether or not you're buying a $300,000 condo or a $3 million home, I'm going to give you my same attention, service, commitment level. And I have stuck to that. And I have had different people that have worked for me that when they have not been at that level, if they treat my clients at all differently, like I said, it could be, a single mom that's barely making ends meet. And sometimes I'm putting a plan together. Maybe she can't buy the house right then, but I'm like, stick with it. Help them develop a plan to get to home ownership. And this is a really important phrase, I would say too. So I meet with Gary Keller about every 3 months in this mastermind. And one of the things he said that really was impactful for me is he said, as realtors, we're really good at closing people that are ready to buy within 0 to 3 months. We really are terrible at closing people that are 3 months to 2 years out. And I've really thought about that because it's not, we sometimes only think right then at that moment. But I helped just recently a client, a single mom that it took her about almost a year to get her finances in order and everything through a divorce and everything. And we eventually got her home and she cried at the table and she said, I don't know of anyone else that would have stuck with me that long. And that was really profound. I get emotional about it because it changed her life and her kids. Her kids said her kids had lived in an apartment their whole life and all they wanted was a backyard. And they all said, we would live in the same bedroom, Mom, if we could just have a backyard. And her price point was it was not easy. So we had to also look for a long time. But homeownership changes people.
Yeah.
And when I had those experiences, and that's why I don't want you to discount what you're doing right now, because you have that ability to change people's lives, but you have to believe it. And it's a mindset thing. And I was actually contacted. This is kind of funny. I was contacted yesterday about doing a quote for a book for new agents. So I'm going to just kind of read you a little thing. Well, maybe I will. Let's see if I can find it. I'm not so good at the tech stuff. So maybe I'll just summarize it for you. But what I wrote this at like 1 a.m. But
This is a new book?
it's
Hasn't been
Jay
published yet?
Papazan from Keller Williams is writing a book for new agents. So they have an MREA book, right? And then they're going to be writing one that's called I'll tell you what it's called. It's called let me look really quick. It's called Rookie Real Estate Agents.
Okay.
And it's going to be amazing. Jay Papazan is amazing. But basically, I told the story about getting my very first client, and it was an experienced person in real estate. It was actually a retiring couple. Okay. I did. I found it. Amazing. Okay. So this was what I wrote for this book. I just basically said, congratulations on becoming a new real estate agent. Now what? That's what I thought too when I became licensed. Looking back, I wish I would have started at KW and with a good mentor. I also wish I would have found the real estate agent, the Red Book, at the beginning of my career. It would have saved me from limited thinking and given me a roadmap for growth and success. I've been an agent for 7 years, and last year I hit MREA status. I'm happy at who I have become and how many people I have been able to help. Admittedly, I made a lot of mistakes the first year and I shed a lot of tears. So be kind to yourself and learn from every transaction. I still learn from every transaction. I was my very first client and I listed our home for sale and within hours of becoming a licensed agent, I figured I couldn't fire myself very easily. And if I messed up, it would be on me and no one else. To my surprise, we received an amazing offer and the transaction went relatively well. Days later, I received a call from a neighbor. They were retired and they wanted to sell their home and move closer to their grandkids. They had sold several homes over the years and they asked me if I would want to interview with them to be their realtor. I said, of course. After hanging up the phone, I realized I had no marketing materials because I was a new agent. I had no marketing materials. I had no idea what to say at a listing appointment, and I would be going up against a lot of experienced agents. Yikes. As we sat down together in their living room, I told them I would give them my full attention since they would be my first and only clients right at that time. And then I said, it's what I could offer. They mentioned that they trusted me because I lived in the neighborhood and I knew about a lot about the community. In that moment, I realized I did have something more to offer. I had local neighborhood expertise and that the other agents that would interview did not. In the end, they chose me. At settlement, they said it was their best real estate transaction they had ever had, and they thanked me. It gave me the boost I needed to become an even better realtor. I had an opportunity to help people, and I loved it. Ask yourself, what can you offer? Maybe it's a servant heart. Maybe it's your time. Maybe it's understanding a certain neighborhood. You have gifts and you have talents, even as a new agent. So dig deep and ask yourself, what can I offer and who can I help today? So I just hope you, like I said, I don't cry easily, but I cry because real estate's changed my life. And last year I hit $1 million in GCI, which I still can't believe. It's pretty wild. So I never thought that. And if I were sitting where you were sitting, I would have never thought that I would hit that number. And it's been a very humbling experience because, like I said, I look at the people I've been able to help and it's propelled me. Gosh, I didn't expect to cry, you guys. Um, but again, I think it's because I didn't realize what I could become and who I could help. And so the best thing you can do for yourself is gain knowledge right now. Gain knowledge and just stay in touch with people because in the end, like I said, I mean, I still can't believe it myself. And when I hit my number, but one of the little things about my story that I'm sharing next week is that I had two of the worst months of my entire real estate career. I basically didn't have any sales last year. I think it was in April, and I had one or two maybe in May. And then I didn't think I would hit the goal because I thought, okay, I had two terrible months. There's no way I'm going to hit that. And then after that, I had nothing to lose. And I thought, I'm just going to throw it all out there because I have nothing to lose at this point because I didn't think I would hit my numbers. And like I said, it was more of a number that I wanted to hit for my family. But meanwhile, my husband got a job last March. And I thought, okay, I don't know if I'll hit that, but it's okay. But I had nothing to lose. So I just said, I'm going to just help people as much as I can. What the crazy part about my journey last year is that I still managed to travel because my kids were living in other states. We have a lot of things going on, all of our families all over the place. And I added it up and I actually was out of the state almost 3 months of last year because my daughter was living in China. So I went twice to China. We were in Delaware, Washington, D.C. We went kind of all over. And we had kind of older aging parents, and that's a whole thing. And so we were everywhere, but I still managed to work. I still gave what I could. And in the kind of my lull of those 2 months, I took a risk and I hired an assistant. And it was somebody that I thought could really, she was the right fit. And I had hired the wrong fit, by the way, but before, but I was excited. And by the way, she did not know anything about real estate. I hired her from the blow dry bar. Like, it's like she would do my hair. So I would see her. And so we became friends and she was young but she had a lot of ambition, a lot of hustle. And I gave her the KPA and she tested really well for an assistant. And so I asked if she wanted to do that. She's like, I don't know anything about real estate, like at all, right? She just even got married a year ago today. Was it today? Anyway, almost a year ago. And anyway, so I've just trained her and she's been able to help me in a way that also has grown my business. But it was risky. I mean, I was like, I'm hiring somebody. My husband doesn't have a job. All of my rentals are me. I'm 100% commission based. Like I have to just know this is going to work out. And really, that's what I had to believe. And so you've got to just believe in yourself. And like I said, I know it sounds crazy, but if you would have told me even 2 years ago that I would make $1 million in GCI um, in a year, I would have never believed it. Like, your gross commissions. So my commissions, I sold 40 million in real estate last year. And I had my lowest to highest price was probably $260,000 for a small condo, 260. And the most expensive home I sold was last year, I have to think about this, over 2 million. So I have kind of a range, a huge range. And again, like one of my core beliefs and core values is that they all got the same level of service and care. And that's something that I feel really strongly about. So so yeah, so as I've kind of, kind of been going over this, but like I said, I don't want to ever say that phone calls are not important because phone calls are, and I think we actually don't call people enough because really we've kind of lost that, in society. I think we send them a text or whatever. One of the things I'm doing right now that I think has actually been really helpful too, and I'm just starting it and getting comfortable with it because I'm not as comfortable with it, is just doing little video clips sometimes. Sometimes I just do a little video clip and just say, hey, I was just thinking about you. And I hope you have a Merry Christmas. And I make it personal and I send it to my clients. And just those little video clips, like people have been really interested in though. Like they're like, thank you so much, for thinking about me or whatever. And so kind of be creative in how you're contacting them, right? And so I'm gonna kind of, this is just kind of that you all know a lot of this naturally. Um, and I kind of wanted to hit them fears and myths because that's kind of what I talked about already. But a lot of times people say lead generation is difficult. I don't have time to lead generate. I don't know what to say. I'm afraid of making mistakes. Um, I've made mistakes, by the way. I made once a big, big mistake and it cost me a lot of money, a lot of money. And it could have been easy for me to give up in that moment and I didn't. And so just know it's you know, again, you've got to just put yourself out there. But the other thing I wanted to touch on is not just the lead generation. What I am sick of hearing is when people say it's a terrible market or it's a bad market. Went from, I had 600,000 GCI in 2023. Last year, I had over 1 million. And from my projections this year, if everything I think goes as planned, I will still hit 1 million this year as well. And I know this sounds weird to me. That's not my focus this year. My focus this year is actually my systems and making sure I gain market share as well. But one of the fears is that people say, I'm joining real estate. How many of you have been told that? Oh, you're getting your license and it's not a good market or whatever. Um, you know what? It's a great market anytime. It just depends on, again, are we talking to the right people at the right time? And I found that I ask myself that a lot. And I'm thinking, and I ask myself, who needs my help today? And, you know, and who will need my help? Again, going to that 0 to 3 months and that 3 months to 2 years. I think who's going to need my help in a year from now? And I already have on this year's book, and the reason I'm telling you this is because, again, I've gotten to be really good at looking past that 0 to 3 month window of closing. And I'm looking at that 3 months to 2 years out. And probably I already have things on the books for 2026 right now, a full year out. I already have at least 2 people that I know will close in 2026 and that are buying. So I'm already looking at who is even a year out right now. And I put that just kind of on a spreadsheet for me to stay in touch with them. And I already on this year's books, I think I already figured out I have at least 20 deals that I know of that will happen this year. And so my projections, I even hate to even say this out loud, are actually even quite a bit more than a million GCI for my projections, because last year I had about 250,000 on the books for the following year. This year I already have almost 400,000 this year on the books. So I'm probably at a projection of between 1.2 and 1.4, which is again crazy. But and I don't want to say it's crazy because it's real. Because it's doable. If I can do this, I promise you can do this too. So anyway, they just basically talk to you about mindset here on what you can do. And again, it's really being positive. It's, like, and what I sometimes do if I am going to make some phone calls that maybe are not so fun, I try to like jump up and down and be like, this is awesome. I want to like pump myself up because people feel your energy and they also can sense if you call them and you're like, well, I know it's a bad market and da da da. When people call me and they go, I know it's a bad market right now. I'm like, are you kidding? It's an awesome market. And I just say, what are you wanting to accomplish? And then I ask them, what are you wanting to accomplish? And they're like, well, we're thinking about buying a property. Well, yeah, let's get a plan. And the thing that people need the most is a plan. So I think that's one of my probably the things I do. There are things I really do really not so well, but that is something I do very well, is I give confidence in the market and I also give them confidence in their decision making. And I'm not high pressure. I'm not like, are you going to buy this? Hey, you need to buy a house right now. No, that is the wrong way to go about that. Those are the people that never can get past a certain income level because it's about them. One other thing I did back in my day, this is now since changed a little bit on the MLS, but back when I first started, it said how much commission was paid on every listing, right? That first year I was an agent, I made a goal never to look at it. I never looked at how much commission was being offered because I didn't want it to taint my decision or to at all influence what I told a client, right? I always wanted to do things for the right reason. And so basically it just kind of gives you ideas on what to kind of think about. And we talked a little bit about this, and I love one thing I love about Keller Williams, because it's not something that comes naturally to me as much, is they have always spreadsheets and models, but I love it because it's not my strength. But going over and actually figuring out real estate also is a little bit numbers game, right? And so if you talk to a certain number of people in a week, those number of people at some point are going to be doing something in real estate. And what I love right now, everybody's talking about the market. Like, that's so awesome. So when they know you do real estate, they talk to you and they say, like I just went to the governor's inauguration and I was there, and I do a lot of my clientele are politicians, and it's kind of interesting just because I've worked in that world. Everybody asked me about the market. I mean, it was like I'd run into somebody and they'd be like, hey, what do you think is going to happen in 2025 with real estate? And I loved being able to say, because I like to read, I like to kind of dive in deep, and I love to tell them and talk to them about it. And so what I think is interesting is that with Keller Williams, they've actually shown if you have this many contacts, if you're contacting, if you're doing touch plans, if you're and again, remember, making it about them, then they know about how much you will make, hey, with your database. And again, this has not been my strong suit because I'll admit it right now, I have not been great at touch plans and things like that. That's actually my goal this year, is really to get in on my systems. But they know that if you go through, there's actual ways, and I would really recommend, have you all read Millionaire Real Estate Agent? Are you reading it or something? No? Do you have a copy? Do you all have copies? What? Okay, we're gonna get you copies, but you really need to read it. And for me, it was really amazing just to read. There's like little success stories in it. And for me, that was what I needed. I needed like okay. And again, I was looking and reading this book saying there's actual models of growth. Like that's amazing. And so just know that there are growth models. But what I think is interesting is like, I mean, I've picked up people in the strangest places, like on airplanes. I've met people in stores, so a lot of people, they go, oh, Heather has this big database because she used to work in politics and everything. And I'm like, okay, that's kind of true. But what was interesting is I looked at who I closed last year. A lot of the people were, again, referrals. And they were like friends of friends, or it was like repeat client, but it wasn't what I probably could have done if I really get my systems. Like I'm looking at the numbers and I'm looking at the models and I'm like, I could probably double my business if I actually really get really consistent, because consistency is the key. And I'm not consistent. I'm like, don't post anything on social media for a long time. Then I'm like, oh, wait, now I'm going to post something. Okay. Then it's like drought mode. So that's one of the things that I've hired my assistant to do. So they talk about your database and cultivating and managing the relationships. And they have all these like cool graphics. But just know, I've found that, again, it's consistency and longevity. Because if you're just thinking you're going to talk to that person once and they're going to send you some business or something, you're crazy. It's not going to happen, right? There's got to be an element of trust. I actually wanted to talk to you also about books. And one of the books that I read, okay, hang on. One of the books I read early on, have any of you read this, Crucial Conversations?
It's a good book.
Have any of you read this? No?
No.
It is a great book. This book, I think, changed my life. And I used to be an adjunct professor. And I made all of my students read this book. And they all said this book changed their life. And it's $15 on Amazon. Maybe it's even 11. I don't remember, but it's cheap. Um, this changed my life personally and professionally, because it teaches you how to deal with difficult people, how to have difficult conversations, how to build trust quickly, and also just how not to tell yourself stories and believe them, but instead to kind of create your own, right? And it's so funny because once you read this book, and once I read this book probably once a year, that's how strongly I feel about this book. I read it actually almost every January. I'll probably read it again right now. I do Audible and I have a hard copy. But the reason this book is so good is because real estate has a lot of emotion around it. And you've got to be able to not absorb a lot of that, but to give the empathy, the love, but to also know how to have difficult, like I said, when I have these difficult clients, how to help them with their mindset, because this is a lot on mindset. And so, but this helped me even in my marriage with my kids. I was like, I wish I would have read this book years ago with my kids. But in fact, I paid my kids each to read it when they were in high school. When they were in high school, I was like, you each get a gift card, an Amazon gift card, if for $50 if you read the book. So I was all about bribing them, I guess. But But again, then here in this slide too, we're going to talk about prospecting and marketing. Um, and kind of on that marketing side, I'm a little different than what they're saying. It's like, I don't, everybody thinks marketing means like paid advertising. It's not necessarily paid advertising. It's even maybe if any of you are on social media, I mean, if you are consistent, that will pay off. I'm not consistent, but I'm going to be consistent this year. But just know that has long-term results, right? And like I said, just the consistency. And once people know you are serious about your profession, they will also be very serious about it as well. And, they will also, they'll look at you as a market expert as well. So, basically, let me just kind of flip through these other slides real quick too. I like instead of calling it a database, I love the data bank. Have you heard that term before? They call it like your database is basically a data bank because they already know there's a certain percentage of leads that will convert if you are inconsistent with contacts. So I really like that. And then again, just kind of having those conversations, with people and different types of communications. I have a business that is, hey, how are you? So this is also a rock star right here. If you know Becca Summers, she's awesome. Have you taught? You've taught. Okay. Yeah. Well, Becca's awesome. She's amazing. But the best leads you can have are from your past clients or people that trust you. And having that referral business come back as well. I'd say last year I did more referrals, like I said, than I've ever done before. I did probably 15, I think, last year. But then almost all of my others were referrals or repeat client. Um, I don't pay for leads. All these people, they get distracted, right? And they're like, I need to be doing this thing and I need to throw money at this system or I need to buy this. Don't do that. I've wasted so much money on things I didn't need. And when I really look at it, who are my best clients are my clients that I've had before, or their friends or family, and people that I have already a trusting relationship with. So even if you are talking to somebody and they're like, in real estate will come up and they talk to you about the market, become an expert, have data, 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 data. People, it builds trust when you have data. So anyway, I think that's about everything I was going to just kind of, go through. But, yeah, you got it. Oh, I think I can. Let's see. Yes, there we go. But anyway, so do you have any questions before we kind of wrap up or any thoughts? I'd love your thoughts. And if you have any questions, I'd love to answer them. No questions? No? No, no. I hope you liked the class. Hopefully that was at least somewhat helpful. I don't know, but anyway, questions? Yeah.
Talking about, getting back to the emotional mindset.
Yes.
You were talking about, so you suffered from fear of scarcity.
Yeah, I think we all do. I think our entire, like even now, what's crazy is sometimes I will wake up and I'll be like, are people going to call me? Are they going to do,
Yeah.
because we are in a commission driven, I mean, it's like, we don't have a base pay. We're not, we're not an employee of anyone. And so I've found that is something that is one of the hardest things for me is that sometimes I tend to kind of go into that, and so I have to really start my day awesome and really like on the positive. And, so whether it's that it's prayer, meditation, yoga, whatever it is, maybe it might be my red light sauna. I try to do something for myself first thing in the morning just to kind of clear my head, get centered, and, just really have good intentions, and I basically just say my own version of a prayer and just say, who can I help today? And I'm here, and universe, I love life and I want to enjoy it and I want to help people. And when you realize that you are changing people's lives and that that is your real job that you are doing, it will change who you are. It changes your outlook. And again, I have to then just say back to myself, there's no need to fear. There's no need to fear. I life is great, kind of find one of the other books. I'm going to give you a few books I've read. Crucial Conversations, I really feel strongly about. There's also one that's called Speed of Trust, and it's by Covey. And it's basically how to build trust with people really quickly. I really like that book. The Universe Has Your Back is another one. I don't know if you've heard of that one. The Universe Has Your Back. It has more of, that was kind of it has nothing to do with real estate, but it just is a little bit on kind of like we were saying, kind of this meditation, giving back to the universe. And I loved reading her story and figuring out what I could do to get that scarcity or anxiety away, and I know it's hard to start it right now. You're like, okay, I'm brand new in this. What am I, what does my future look like? Because it's hard to see or predict. And so the universe had your back. Crucial Conversations. Shoni has been talking about a book called 10X. Have you heard of that book, 10X? It's a really good book. And that is, it basically is, and I think it would be great for all of you because they talk about how we sometimes talk about incrementally growing our businesses. Like, oh, if I can only just do like 5% next year more, a little bit at a time. And basically, they say, you know what? Shoot big. Shoot big, because if you think of in this 10X mode of, hey, I am going to be a millionaire real estate agent. Like I would encourage you all every day to say, I'm a millionaire real estate agent and I am here to help people. And then when you do that, it's gonna change your mindset. And then for me, what I do also to get fear out of my life is when I have knowledge, right? So it's like dig deep on something, get data on the market trends. Like look on Utah Real Estate, National Association of Realtors websites. They have great information there. Read that. I mean, you're at KW, we got like such amazing trainings here. And take that and really, implement it in your lives. And that is also going to, again, when you can be confident, if you don't believe in yourself, no one else will. And so that's the key is that, and the way that it's not that you have to be a smooth talker or anything like that. I'm not. In fact, I've even talked people out of buying sometimes. I'll be like, right now is probably not the time for you, but in 2 months, let's chat again about it or whatever. But they will respect you because you have their best interest. If they know you have their best interest in mind, then that trust is there. And so those would be probably the key books I would say. But I would start probably with Crucial Conversations or the 10X book because it was just so helpful in my mindset. And again, I know we talk mindset, but it really is mindset because every time I've had a jump in my business or high growth, and I've been licensed 7 years. Like I'm not a 30-year agent, but just between data and caring for people and having that mix, that is a magical mix and that will benefit you. So anyway, so I'm glad you came. I hope it was helpful and it's nice to see all of you and learn your names. So thanks so much for that. And let me see what I have because there's only 5 of you, right? So let me see what I brought. I like loaded, I loaded up. You know what's funny? I have 5 books. I brought a 10X and I brought Crusoe. I literally buy these. This sounds funny. I buy these in like a case. That's how much I love this book. So
that next one?
Yes,
Oh,
yeah.
thank you.
So I
Thank you.
would highly recommend, well, promise me you're gonna read these, but
Yeah.
I'm gonna like harass you about it, okay? And again, think of it in terms of your business and your personal life and how that, you know, like I said, like sometimes I would ask myself, there's like little questionnaires in there. It's so good. And this book is good to read. I read it, like I said, I read this book almost every January. And just, and then what I try to do in here is there's different chapters. I'll focus on one chapter, like maybe it'll be like, be a good listener. And I'll focus on that aspect for like a month or two. And so then I choose like one theme in that book to focus on. So, yay, okay. Go class, go team, go. And no, you're well, that is so sweet. Sure, yes, but I've never done that before. But I'm gonna just say you rock. And you know what? Like, let this, like I said, if you need anything, I'm happy to help. When I can and I'm here, I, you know, like I said, KW, really, you've done the best thing you could do, which is start here. Because, you're gonna love the trainings. And like I said, I'm a very different person. And if I would have started, like if I would have started here, I feel like I would have been on even a better, faster trajectory.
Yeah.
So anyway, well, thank you. So, okay, thanks so much. And